It's been a year since we've been in this home, and I've kind of forgotten how we did certain details. So I know that this entryway was kind of a beast. I mean, there were so many complicated factors. We have the fluting on the walls that we did out of wood. We did this plaster cove. We had the wood layers on the ceiling as shallow reveal. Then we transitioned to sheetrock. Tell us, like, what came first? Like, how did we even do this?
I don't know.
Well, if you don't know, then I don't know. I mean, somebody's got to know.
Yeah. So I would say the first thing we put together is like, how does this look? And the fluted molding is driving the train in this room.
This is true.
And we had a lot of conversations about the size of the fluted molding, how the fluted moldings will receive each other at the corners. Ben was very specific that he wanted the corners to be round, not two chunks of fluting to hit. How the fluting will
that.
Right? How the fluting will then intercept the casing.
Yeah.
And the casing has two different planes. Yeah. And so there was a very specific meeting about the line of the fluting to hit part of this casing. So there are a lot of details, but the first thing was to capture the moments together, place some samples, go back to the drawing board, put more samples up, and then you gave a thumbs up.
Right.
We even talked about the baseboard, like how far do we want to see in the indentation of the fluted molding?
This is true.
This is very true.
I remember.
Yes.
And it was funny because I remember that behind the fluting is sheetrock. I remember the fluting was put onto the wall, and then there was actually going to be the reveal. We're using it almost as this implied baseboard where we did this little shadow reglet cutting through the fluting, which we thought was a really cool idea. And it is a really cool idea, but it's very hard to pull off. But I remember when it was just the sheetrock and you could see through to the sheetrock, we really had to question, like, how deep do we see into there?
Right. You felt like you got lost.
Yes.
And this is a structured place.
Exactly right. So we felt like we needed to have something. So they actually embedded a piece of wood, build that shadow line to be a little less deep than it was.
3/8 of an inch from the back part of the molding.
You remember that?
I remember that.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So, but getting back to all of the different layerings that are happening in this home, another really cool detail I remember is the fluted molding's up, everything's looking great, but now we have wood floors to install. And you can imagine the wood floor wants to slide under the base so that we don't have choppy looking wood at the fluted molding. Right? So there were pieces and parts that were placed very intentionally at different times in the process. So in this case, wood floor was installed, and then the remaining base fluted molding was then installed, painted, and then of course, when we get to the very end, we're taping every little piece of fluting so we're not putting stain on the fluting.
I remember the flooring subcontractor, I came in and they had so carefully taped every single thing off, and there was somebody going in and sanding inside each one of those flutes and putting the staining. I mean, it's one of those things, again, there's a human component to anything that you design, and sometimes you don't realize how difficult something that you've designed is really going to be to pull off.
Well, that's the cool part. Like, we're all better in our industry because we get to go through really complex situations, and it worked out great. I'm being a little dramatic, but it was a very systematic approach with a lot of planning up front.
This is so true. Well, and I love the way it turned out. And honestly, it is one of those things that a lot of people, when they're coming into our home, they experience and they can feel and they can tell how exceptional the work was done. But it is one of those things, they have no idea how the sausage was made.
Yes.
It was very tricky to pull off all the details that we pulled off in this space.
Yes, it looks awesome.